Have you ever looked at the visage of the world, glittering with prosperity, tippling with the euphoria of authority, and maddened with the craving for affluence? Alas, the face of the world is not unblemished. It bears the painful wound with the stains of ignorance and poverty. The agonizing cries for existence make this wound even more painful. Devoid of the mercy of God, deprived of human sympathy, the agonizing cries for existence make this wound even more painful. In the exhausting race for a living, these souls have been left far behind, crumpled and thrown away. They live in a neglected corner of the world. We don't know of their life. We don't know of their numbers. We ignore them as if they were not human beings. Panting for a handful of food, gasping for a mouthful of water. When life becomes unbearable, they die a silent death. Who would face the challenge of such a worm-like life and grim death? 1 in a million. An eccentric? No, an angel. With his touch, pain subsides. Dark pathways are brightened. Withering lives are restored to normalcy. This is that touch. It fights death, crouching at every footstep. It rescues people from the portals of death. It has made friends with cruel adversities. It has plunged headlong and immersed itself wholeheartedly into the desperate business of just existing regardless of everything else. Clothed in a modest vest and plain cotton trousers barely long enough, this quiet and reserved human being has for the past 30 long years in the wilderness of the distant forest been standing steadfast on his convictions and has been working ceaselessly. Working to bring God's touch to the unfortunate human beings whom society has forgotten. In applying the soothing salve on the wounds of Adivasis, he has been so deeply immersed in alleviating this suffering that he has had not even a moment's time to ask for help from others. Dr. Prakash Amte and his wife, who has followed him like his shadow for life, Dr. Manda Amte. This is the story of their pious, dedicated and modest life. Not just a story, call it a thriller if you like.
Though
put in fetters, I sing the song of speed. My tears have no time to pamper my grief. This is the man who sired the saga of success from the worm-infested wounds of leprosy. The invincible warrior whose steps turned to Bhamragad for the first time. The year was 1970. A dense forest situated on the borders of Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh and Andhra Pradesh, totally segregated from the world around. The path was hurdled by 6 rivers without bridges to cross them, no roads either. This was home to the most backward of the tribals, the Mardia Gonds. They ruled this jungle. Abject poverty, lack of education and total absence of medical facilities, these were the woes of their life. It was a strange world, severed from the surrounding regions and submerged in the swamps of forest darkness. Nobody ever knew it was inhabited. A man with an indomitable tenacity set his feet firmly in this horrible territory. Baba Amte was his name. The man has transformed a barren land into Anandwan. He decided to help the Madhya tribals to initiate a new project for them. Several hands came into action with this resolve. On the banks of the river Indravati in the village Hemalkasa, Baba erected his first hut. He named his dream Lok Biradari Prakalp. In 1973, the government offered this project some land, and Baba's younger son Prakash offered his word. Begin with your work and I shall shoulder every responsibility that follows. March 1974. Dr. Prakash gave up his internship for Master of Surgery and Dr. Manda gave up her government job. The couple arrived at Hemalkasa. Before I decided to dedicate myself to social work, I had enjoyed life in every possible way. But my son, after getting married, had not seen a film even. Neither did he enjoy a cup of tea. Compared to him, my wife and I had enjoyed some pleasures of life at least. But this couple came here immediately after their marriage. No electricity, no telephones, no means of communication to let others know of your life or death. Cross the rivers and forests on foot for 2 or 3 days. Only then would you see the face of the outside world. Life dominated by a pitiless solitude and the company of ferocious animals. It was a tough time in the beginning, like leaping into flames. When we began, we could get at least the food of our choice. My son and daughter-in-law couldn't eat chapatis and vegetables for months, nay, for 12 years. They had to live on rice and dal only, and some pickle to go with it. Prakash never ate rice in his childhood. He preferred chapatis. I used to scold him for not eating rice. Here, he had to sustain on rice alone. A strange beginning for the bliss of married life. There was no shop in Bhamragad area. Groceries had to be supplied from outside. For 9 months in a year, the roads were blocked. For the remaining 3 months, we worked day and night, supplying food and building material, bricks, lime, timber, iron and so on. The only roadworthy vehicle was the truck. We bought one. Often we had to carry this material through small boats on shoulders where there were no roads. Often we had to wait on the riverbank for the flood waters to recede. Groceries and medicines had to be supplied round the year. Building material was supplied before the rains began. It was a difficult journey, but certainly not a solitary one. Young men from all corners came here as an adventure and offered their entire lives to this project. Baba's daughter Renuka, VILAS MANOHAR, DADA PANCHAL, JAGANNATH, GOPAL PHADNIS, MANOHAR Yampalwar, Baban PANCHAL, Mukund Dikshit, and the list goes on. 30 years have passed by. The world has changed. The path to Hemalkasa is still not an easy one. Hemalkasa is situated in a remote corner of Maharashtra, 200 kilometers of a desolate path after one leaves Chandrapur. Awesome rivers to cross, overwhelming deepness and darkness of the jungle, a serpentine path that leads you away from the world bragging of the 21st century, a path to an abysmal world. About 3 kilometers before village Bhamragad in Gadchiroli district, towards your right, you come across a familiar signboard. These are the camps in the courtyard of the Lok Biradari, campsites of suffering and sorrow. This silent night at Hemalkasa has swallowed immense grief in its bowels. Never Nevertheless, the dawn here is both cheerful and fresh. It marks the beginning of a day with the touch of dedicated activity. Prakash and Manda begin their day treading these familiar paths leading into the depth of the forest. They do not usually miss these quiet moments by the tranquil riverside. The closeness and harmony of the two minds makes speech redundant. If we do ask anything out of curiosity, they might reminisce the past. Some 25 years before. When we began our project in 1973, we had no idea about the health-related problems of the tribals. As we began to move through villages and as people started visiting our dispensary, we began to realize the gravity of the problems. We knew that they lived off roots, tubers and hunted animals, but we had no idea how much nutrition these items provided. We observed that malnutrition was the major problem here. One of the tribals was undernourished. Most of the tribals were undernourished, unable to obtain 2 meals a day. Malnutrition led to epidemic diseases. Malaria was another monster. Almost everyone was affected by it. Mosquitoes attacked a child right from its birth and the child developed malaria. Moreover, they had no clothes to wear. In winter, when the temperature dropped down to 5 degrees, they slept closer to the fire. Obviously, there were burn cases in a large number. I have seen a 2-month-old child with its feet totally burnt. Its fatigued mother had slept with the child at the front. Maybe the child started crying due to hunger in the night. She thought it was due to the cold. To provide more warmth, she pushed it towards the fire. Unfortunately, its legs got pushed into the fire and were burnt. In this jungle area, everyone sleeps on the floor and therefore cases of snake bites are also common. During the hot days prior to the monsoon, snakes come out of their holes. If a sleeping man moves his limbs while a snake is passing close by, the snake bites in defense. There are several such cases. Then there are fevers, coughs, dysenteries and so on. Sickle cell anemia is also very common. It is an endemic hereditary disease here. Moreover, these tribals had no idea of modern treatment. There were no dispensaries for them. Nobody had worked in this region. People were governed by blind belief. In fact, it was faith for them. We call it blind belief. Every village had a bhagat or a shaman. If one was affected by an illness, he was taken to the bhagat. The bhagat then used his traditional means of magic words or mantras. Chicken or other animals were sacrificed. If one lived after such treatment, the credit went to the bhagat. If one perished, it was believed to be the wrath of the gods. The eyes filled with doubt and disbelief today eagerly await the arrival of Bhau and Tai, brother and sister to them. Manda Tai begins her OPD before 9 o'clock in the morning. All these faces await her eagerly. Manda Tai's ability to talk in the local dialect establishes her rapport at once. These suffering faces, some troubled by ascites, some troubled by tuberculosis. The leg of one has been eaten by a tiger. Another one, mauled by a bear, has a severe wound on his back. Most of them suffer from malaria. Cancer? Yes, it is present, and now even AIDS has made its presence felt. Yet none of the eyes would speak of pain. These slight frames can walk 100 kilometers even when one leg is affected by gangrene. The tribals here had never experienced the modern medicines, never seen tablets nor injections. We gave them injections at the hospital, but tablets were a problem. Tribals had no sense of time, no watch, no clock. We instructed them to take a tablet at sunrise, at noon or at night. We had not mastered their language and they didn't know how to take the tablets. Some swallowed all the tablets meant for 3 days in one gulp. Some felt giddy, some started vomiting, and they used to rush to the emergency ward. Soon patients started arriving from a distance of 200 kilometers even. This was even more problematic. We decided to ask them to stay here for some time and teach them how to take their tablets, so that they won't need to come here again and again. Yet we couldn't be certain they won't swallow all the tablets at once. Could have been fatal. But we trusted them.
पण तरी सुद्धा एक मोठं रिस्क होतं की त्यांनी सगळ्या गोळ्या एकदम घेऊन टाकल्या. त्याच्या जीवाला धोका झाला.
Who would bandage the wounds of those who were doomed to walk barefoot for miles and miles? Their food was pieces of snakes, roasted rats and red ants mashed with salt. When this meal was over, they would devour the tablets in one go and guzzle down the bottle of liquid medicine. Treating them was a frightening ordeal.
92 साली एकदा कॉलराची साथ आली. सुरुवातीला एक पहिले काही.
In 1992 there was an epidemic of cholera. Initially we thought there were cases of diarrhea and dysentery or diarrhea and vomiting. Suddenly Prakash said, "This is an outbreak of cholera, Vilas. Arrange for saline at once." Within half a day, 300 patients were admitted. I'm sorry to tell you, 22 of them could not be saved, but the rest survived. On that day, a woman arrived with her child, a boy. It was obviously a cholera case. I administered saline at once. By about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the boy had recovered sufficiently. The woman told me that she would make a trip to her home now. I was a little annoyed at her. Can't you see your son has been rescued from the jaws of death? All the doctors are hard-pressed with patients. Shouldn't you stay here with your son? She started weeping. I asked her the reason. My husband died of the same disease yesterday. I started coming here with my 2 children. The younger one in my arms died on the way. I have left his body covered with thorns in the jungles of Kumarguda. Now that this one is saved, I want to go and offer the other a burial. Now the situation has improved. Not a single Madhya tribal from the 1,000 villages around Hemalkasa remains untreated. This work continues ceaselessly during the nights and days, at the dispensary or in the courtyard, or even on the steps of a house. The afternoon passes. The queue at the OPD is not yet over. And these are the annals of pain.
आम्ही सुरुवातीला जेव्हा हा दवाखाना सुरू केला तेव्हा पेशंट लोकांजवळ.
When we started this dispensary, the patients had no clothes to wear. Both men and women used to have a single piece of loin cloth. If we offered them a card, they had no way to keep it secure and to bring it the next time. We saw that we ourselves would have to maintain these records. We made an alphabetical list of all the villages, allowed 1 box for each village. Every box contained the case papers of patients from that village. On his visit, the patient would tell us the name of his village, which made it easier to locate his case paper. This system provided his case history and health monitoring became easy. Today we have records of 2 lakh patients from 1,000 villages around this spot, maintained from day 1 of this dispensary. Patients from remote villages stay in these premises. They cook their own food. They work here as well. This woman called Pishibai comes from the village Kuyar. She has a cancerous growth on her foot. Surgical removal of it is the best possible way. Operations are performed in the open so that they develop a trust in the treatment. They have no vehicle to reach the city, no money to pay the doctor. This operation would end her pains, but only for the present. And further, in the next surgery camp, the leg will have to be amputated. Since costlier means of ending the pain are not available, such palliative treatment is used. That too, right in the open. Who needs an operation theatre? Without any special training in surgery and without the aid of modern surgical equipment, this man has performed thousands of operations successfully, and that too without accepting a single paisa from the patient. The hospital that began in a small hut with improvised bamboo furniture today has a small operation theatre. Adequate surgical equipment is available. The main pillar of Lok Biradari is the Maharogi Seva Samiti at Varora. Foreign organizations like Swiss Aid or Oxfam came into this jungle with their generous help, the reason why all this has been possible. Nevertheless, the number of patients is increasing, and along with it, the number of difficulties.
कॅन्सर आहे, हार्ट स्वेलिंग, लिव्हरचा कॅन्सर आहे. हा प्रकल्प सुरू झाल्यापासून 17 वर्षे या प्रकल्पात वीज नव्हती.
For the first 17 years of this project, we had no electricity. Though we started the dispensary, we couldn't buy the necessary medical gadgets and equipment. In 1990, electricity reached us, but the supply was sporadic and hence useless. We then started appealing to people and procured X-ray and sonography machines. We were worried as we had no pathological equipment. UNFT then provided us that. We also have an auto-analyzer and a cell counter. TB is rampant here, but now we have a microscope and a small laboratory. There was one disadvantage. We had the equipments, but the recurring expenses, operating costs on them went on increasing. We had no grants for that. This hospital on an average has 40,000 patients per annum. Almost all medicines are provided to them free of cost, whatever the nature of the ailment. We never considered the cost of treating it because treating the patient was our need. The cost of medicines is constantly increasing. Every year we buy medicines to the tune of 10 lakh rupees. For all these years, the project has continued because someone was always there to help us.
इतके वर्ष झाले कोणी ना कोणी येत आहे, मदत करताय, त्यामुळे हा प्रकल्प सुरू आहे.
But the increasing cost, no doubt, is an alarming situation. Yet the list of difficulties has never overshadowed the enthusiasm here. The innocent smile of a safely delivered child after all the difficulties of labor, that perhaps is the greatest reward for the doctor. This tiny bundle of vivacity has sprung from this soil. Soon it would begin to move on its own. Its mother would then send it here to Prakash Bhav, to this school of the Lok Biradari. These children have come from villages located at a distance of 4 days' walk through hills and valleys. Would you believe their parents have brought them here at a very tender age in this residential school of the Lok Biradari? Madhya Gonds were the most undeveloped of the tribals. Formal education was unnecessary and purposeless in their way of life. The jungle felling contractors trespassed into their lives. Forest guards and record keepers began to terrorize and loot them. The government robbed them of their freedom in the jungle and imposed upon them a kind of tyranny. Workers of Lok Biradari saw all this exploitation as they began to move wider and wider into the villages. The so-called developed civilization offered them a kilogram of salt in exchange for a kilogram of vegetable gum, a much costlier commodity. Tried to lure their young girls by means of trivial gifts. If Madhyas were to face this new urban civilization, their children must learn. The resolve was made. Lok Biradari opened a school in 1976. The first class was held under a tree.
ज्ञान दूर करावं या उद्देशाने इथे आम्ही शाळा सुरू करण्याचा निर्णय घेतला.
We decided to open a school here in order to remove the ignorance amongst tribals. At that time, there was a school at Bhamragad offering instruction up to the 7th standard. Some villages had one teacher schools, yet not a single boy had finished matriculation. Tribals were exploited due to their ignorance, so we decided to open our school by July 1976. Gopal PHADNIS, who had given up his job as a professor of English, shouldered the responsibility of this school together with Mukund Dikshit. The struggle began with collecting students for the school. They went from hamlet to hamlet, urging parents to send their children to the school. Many of them were affected by scabies, diarrhea and other such ailments. They didn't understand our language, had never seen a book. School didn't interest them at all. Confinement to a room was boring for these free birds of the jungle. They used to run away.
तर मग आम्ही त्यांना खूप पटवून सांगितलं की बा शिक्षणाचं महत्त्व पटवलं आणि त्यांना
We convinced them of the importance of education. Finally, from about 10 to 12 villages, we could muster the strength of about 25 students. One truant boy who had to be led to school virtually by the ear is today known as Dr. KANNA MADAVI, the first physician from the society of these tribals.
पहिल्यांदा जेव्हा आलो तेव्हा असं वाटायचं की कोंडल्यासारखं वाटायचं म्हणून एकदा दोनदा तीनदा असं पडून जायचं.
In the beginning, I used to feel like being locked up in the school. I ran away many times. My teacher was one Mr. Dikshit. He used to come to me and take me to school again. Running away was joyous. Going back to school was always painful. But Mr. Dikshit offered me love and developed my interest in studies. Our school was not a four-walled school. We studied under a tree by the riverside. I became a doctor through such a process that comprised love and motivation by all. Prakash Bhau, Vilas Bhau, Phadnis Sir, Tai, and all these people. After Dr. Kanna, this school wrote yet another story of success, that of Dr. Pandurang Pungati. Over the last 25 years, this school has changed the fortunes of Hemalkasa and its surroundings. Several students who have passed out of this school have secured jobs as teachers, forest guards, land record keepers and so on.
मी 1993 मध्ये लोक बिरादरी आश्रमशाळा इथे या ठिकाणी.
Since 1993, I have been working as a teacher in this Lok Biradari school. I am proud of my job and the fact that I was educated in this very school.
कोणतेही पाहुणे आले तरी अभिमानाने सांगतो की मी इथेच शिक्षण घेऊन मी इथेच शिक्षक आहो.
I had no idea of education. When I came here, Prakash Bhau taught us under the trees. Today you see all these buildings around. It's because of Prakash Bhau that we have progressed so much. He guided us to be educated. Today I am working here as a teacher. I am grateful to him. We were very happy with these classes held under a tree. Our teachers taught us about the idea of donating labor or shramdan. They taught us about the dignity of labor. No work is inferior. Today you see this school, the students' hostel for our tribal children. All this is due to Prakash Bhau. These are the children of nature. They delight in competing with the wind, in throwing the javelin with all their might. Even on the sports ground, none would be able to defeat them.
हे माझ्या शाळेत शिकणारी आदिवासी मुलं इथे शाळेत येण्यासाठी जे डोंगर दऱ्या पार करून येतात.
These are the tribal children of my school. They cross hills and valleys to reach here. That strenuous activity has toned up their muscles so much that even without the help of modern sports facilities, they have successfully competed with the urban students and won prizes at the state and national level athletic meets. It's all in the muscles.
मिळवण्याचं श्रेय त्यांना त्यांच्या मसल्स मध्ये तयार झालेलं आहे.
लक्ष्मी चैतू ओक्सा पिंकी पुसू परसा जुन्नी करपा.
Once upon a time, the Madhya girls were shy of even talking to a man from the outside world. Now they are ready to step into the modern world.
की हे भारतीय सैनिकांनो, हे संपूर्ण देश
Children who read the Jungle Book with great accuracy now understand the printed book as well. The Madhyas lived mainly on hunting until recently. They had no idea of ploughing and cultivating the land. Their idea of agriculture was casting seed at the beginning of the rains and harvesting whatever grew. The first farming at Hemalkasa was carried out by the Lok Biradari. The people who had roasted mice and crushed ants for food were introduced jawar, bread and vegetables for the first time in their life. Lok Biradari workers then went from house to house distributing seeds for farming. Prakash Bhau himself repaired several hand pumps in Madhya villages. Today everywhere you would see the land rich with crops. Prakash Bhau and Lok Biradari workers have virtually fertilized the land with their sweat and toil. Tribals do not understand the law printed in books. When they went to the police station with their disputes, they were cheated. When Prakash Bhau noticed this, he himself began to arbitrate between the two parties. You might witness such a scene in his courtyard at any hour of the day. This is the Lok Adalat, People's Court of the Lok Biradari.
सुरुवातीच्या काही दिवसात आमच्या फिरण्यामुळे लक्षात आलं की गावातले भांडणं
During our initial visits to the villages, we observed that the tribals settled their disputes through panch mandali or juries. The disputes range from trivial ones to divorce cases. The tribals' belief in Prakash Bhau increased. If the village juries were unable to decide a case, they came to Prakash Bhau. We allowed both the parties to speak freely. Once they had given vent to their feelings, the minds were free. They were then ready to accept the advice of a respectable person. Prakash for them was one such person. A fine was imposed on the erring party according to their custom. This Lok Adalat developed a lot in the days ahead. Some of them argued like a professional lawyer. Like case law, they used to refer to previous cases in different villages and the fines imposed. We used to accept their decision. We realized that the cases decided in our Lok Adalat never opened up again. Prakash Bhau's decision was unconditionally accepted. It might be easier to win the trust of human beings. How shall we judge the value of this love and affection? Who are the other inmates of Hemalkasa? Just think about it. All these are the kith and kin of Prakash Bhau. The history of this relationship is indeed astonishing.
असंच एकदा मी आणि मंदा आणि आमचे कार्यकर्ते जंगलात फिरत असता.
Once our workers, Manda and I were wandering through a forest. We came across a group of tribals marching in a file. They were a little afraid of us as we were strangers in this region, but they couldn't evade us. We saw that they had hunted some animals. As they were passing us, we noticed that they had hunted 2 red-faced monkeys. There was a baby monkey attached to the breast of its dead mother, trying to feed itself. We requested them to hand over the baby to us. They were reluctant. Our children would eat it, they said. The baby was really cute. But it was food for them. Parting with it was difficult. We said we would offer you some other food in exchange for the baby. After some bargaining, they agreed. We carried the baby to our cottage. Bottle feeding restored it to good health within a couple of days. I developed friendship with a dog I had brought from Nagpur. We had to take some efforts, no doubt, but on the 3rd day, the dog began to carry the baby on its back. As people began to see the effect of our medicines, the number of patients began to increase. Some brought to us some bear cubs. These were additions to our monkey and deer. Then came the panther cubs. They too grew in the open. For about 2 years they lived with us in our house. They came with us for a walk, a bath in the river, played with the dog. My children also were very young at that time, Digant, Aniket and Aarti. Aarti was hardly 1 year old. When she was born, she weighed 1.75 kilos. Negal, the panther, was 500 grams on his birth. Both were of the same age. Within a year, Aarti grew to 8 kilos, while Negal grew to 50 kilos. They grew together in our house. Negal loved Aarti, and she was never afraid of him, as they had grown together. The story of animals who grew on the premises of Lok Biradari, of lions and tiger cubs, of crocodiles, monitor lizards and snakes, of swift deer and lovable monkeys has been immortalized by VILAS MANOHAR in his book titled Negal. The one who frolicked and romped with Aarti was Negal. He even followed her to the school. Prakash Amte was certainly loved by humans, but ferocious animals too were equally attached to him. What could be the secret of this affection?
तर मगरीपासून तर वाघापर्यंत जे या लोकांनी प्रेम दिलं त्याची तुलनाच होऊ
The love offered by all these animals is beyond comparison. I often say the trust offered by these four-legged or legless animals is so much. I don't trust the two-legged animal to that extent. This lust for life that challenges the most venomous creatures must have had a limitless treasure of love at its core.
जिथे भीती असते तिथे प्रीती नसते.
Where there is fear, love can't exist. One who plays with a bandit crate around his neck treats life and death even-handedly. Only he can perform such experiments in love. That is the secret of his love. This huge project that has attracted the affection of both animals and humans has behind it the inspiration of Dr.Prakash and Manda Amte. The cumulative power of several dedicated hands has kept the activity progressing continuously.
आम्ही आज जवळजवळ 25 वर्ष एकत्र काम करत आहोत. आम्ही प्रत्येक जण
We have been working together for almost 25 years now. Each one of us came inspired by Baba, or because we wanted to work with him. At that time, this region was more isolated from the other world. There were no means of transport. We came here and settled here automatically. Now, after these 3 decades of activity, we are a little tired. We are waiting for a new generation to receive some relief. My son is going to join me. Digant, son of Prakash, is already here. We constantly think of the continuation of this work, of the future, not the past. Such is the work, tight-lipped about its success, continuing in a remote corner of Maharashtra. Not much known to the Indians even. Yet, people from abroad reach here in search of Prakash Amte. For instance, a resident of Canada for the last 40 years and president of Maharashtra Seva Samiti, Dr. JAGANNATH WANI.
माझी आणि प्रकाशची ओळख.
I came to know of Prakash through the book Negal. 3 years ago, on the birthday of Baba, I visited Hemalkasa for the first time. The purpose was to observe the work and help Prakash through the medium of Maharashtra Seva Samiti.
डिसेंबर 1999 मध्ये
In December 1999, Dr. Jagannath Wani, the president of the Maharashtra Seva Samiti Canada, came here for the first time. He observed our project carefully. While returning, he asked me about the help that we required. The unexpected question took me by surprise.
प्रकाशच्या पहिल्या भेटीमध्ये
In my first meeting with Prakash, we decided to prepare a project report for the grant. Of course, Prakash has no time for such paperwork. He thinks of work only. I decided not to bother him with the report making and did it on my own. Since then, I visited Hemalkasa a number of times. With massive aids from the Maharashtra Seva Samiti, SIDA, that is Canadian Development International Agency, and Wild Rose Foundation, today you can see new classrooms for the school, a beautiful hostel for the girls, and residential quarters for the doctors.
प्रत्येक वेळा भारत भेटीत गेलो की त्याला
I
भेटायचं.
never felt better unless I had visited him on my trip to India. When the time to say goodbye comes, my feet are reluctant to move. As the sun descends towards the west, the evening OPD begins. Pishibai, who was operated upon for cancerous growth just 4 hours ago, is sleeping peacefully now. Dalsukh, who had reached the portals of death a few months ago, has been cured of tuberculosis and has come to visit Prakash Bhav together with his father. This is the same touch, charged with the same power of dedication, the same degree of fervor, but it comes from the new generation. Dr. Digant, the son of Prakash Bhav and Mandatai, he has returned to his chosen land.
लहानपणापासूनच असे बरेचसे पेशंट मी बघत होतो, आईबाबांना ट्रीट करतानाही बघत होतो.
I had been observing such patients and the way my parents treated them since my childhood. I had made a resolve right then, and it became firm as I grew, that I shall be a doctor and work in this place only. Accordingly, the steps were taken. No attraction enticed me. I don't know why. Maybe it was the pull of this land, but I am here to stay. Henceforth, the nature of this hospital shall remain as it is. As an expansion of it, I have plans of starting a mobile hospital.
ऍक्टिव्हिटी म्हणून मोबाईल हॉस्पिटल सुरू करायचा माझा एक विचार आहे.
Bandu, the boy who grew up with Aniket and Digant, is also going to join them. Now Dr. Pandurang Pungati, a pediatrician. Without being told, without being asked, the third generation has joined hands with Baba. The struggle and sacrifice of 2 generations has been augmented with these young dreams. Now, the path under the feet has become more familiar, more affectionate, like a good friend. It is covered with the petals of appreciation, scented with the fragrance of admiration across the continents, and bedecked with bouquets of awards. The Indian government has honored this dedicated life with the title of Padmashree. The government of Monaco honored Dr.Prakash and Manda Amte as the Schweitzer couple of India and released this special postage stamp in appreciation. Several such awards have found their path through the deep forests of Hemalkasa to this spot. In a way, the awards themselves have been honored. Awards, in fact, never remain tied to the papers or mementos. You see them in a living form, like this. They even talk to us. I want to study and become a teacher. I love teaching. My father too has the same desire. I want to be a soldier and defend our nation. I wish to become a nurse. It's my earnest desire. I wish to become an agricultural officer and teach our people the modern methods of farming. New dreams have begun to spring from this soil. A new enthusiasm is taking firm root. This is an eve of fulfillment for a father with a fighting spirit.
Bhagwan Arvind
Ghosh had written a postcard, "Turn your back on the world and the entire world shall stand behind you. Go ahead. I have experienced this in my life. I can see Prakash experiencing it. I am the fortunate one indeed. A man of the old generation hands over his charge to the new generation and bids farewell to the world with a grateful heart on his way to the last moment. I have seen this happy succession. All my pains have been exalted in that."
यातना धन्य झाल्या.
Years ago, a destination was fixed. The journey has progressed much further ahead. Yet, there are many miles to go before they sleep. Sometimes in a leisurely moment, they remember the old days. The entire life flits by before their eyes, and the bright light burns on ceaselessly. Countless pains, limitless labor, host of difficulties overcome, everything is beyond restraint. Yet these companions for life, on the strength of their togetherness, are engrossed forever in their chosen mission